Brace yourself, human. We're having puppies. The alien Canines' shocking ultimatum. Commander Jace Riker doesn't wait for permission. He's a soldier bred by violence, raised by chaos, and the moment the explosions rip through the night, he's already diving behind the half-crumbled concrete barrier. Shrapnel clatters around him, pinging off the battered plates of his combat armor. He presses his back against the cold rock, adrenaline snarling through his veins. His neck cracks once to the left, once to the right, old habits stirring as he readies himself for another kill-or-be-killed moment. He wipes sweat and grit from his brow, every muscle taut, every fiber of his body screaming at him to attack or die trying. Behind him, gunfire rasps through the darkness. He clenches his jaw, scanning the area. The night is a riot of muzzle flashes and plasma arcs, tangling together in a savage dance of war. He spots the Merc leader, a hulking brute with 4 insectoid arms and an oversized rifle, barking orders in some alien dialect. Jace never learned those words. He learned how to silence them. He inhales, forces calm, and springs from cover. His boots pound the ground as he charges. The reek of scorched metal and ozone fills his lungs. The Merc whirls, tries to bring that behemoth gun around, but Jace is faster. He slams a plasma knife into the alien's neck, twisting it once, hard, to ensure the kill. The Merc gurgles and drops, a spatter of brackish blood painting Jace's already stained armor. But there are more of them. He hears them, senses them, a half-dozen, maybe more, creeping through the rubble with lethal intent. He sees the shapes moving in the shadows, can almost feel their hungry eyes on him. His heart hammers. He's alone out here, pinned down. No, backup on the horizon. He was never much for praying, so he steadies his breath and digs in. Then, with no warning, the Mercs lunge. Blades flash in the flickering gloom. Jace spins away from a stabbing blow, counters with a savage elbow, feels. Cartilage snap under the impact. Another leaps from behind, screeching, and Jace brings his arm up to block the strike, hissing as the blade grazes his forearm. That's going to smart in the morning, if he lives to see it. He returns fire with a brutal punch that lands square. In the Merc's torso, bones crack, and the alien hits the ground, writhing. One more tries to flank him, but a streak of motion cuts across the battlefield, faster than he can register. There's a flash of ember orange, a glimpse of something with pointed ears, and a lethal, mesmerizing grace. His vision tumbles for a heartbeat as the newcomer tears through the group, slicing limbs and throats with terrifying efficiency. Bodies crumple. Screams cut short. Jace stands still, panting, watching the scene with the uneasy sense that a far deadlier predator has just entered the arena. He sees her now, rising from the carnage like a living flame. She's tall, every line of her figure lethal and coiled tight. Alien markings swirl across her exposed skin, glowing faintly in time with the wild drumming of her heart. Her eyes burn a molten blue, not quite human, not quite anything he's ever seen, and her hair is a deep, vivid orange. Fox-like ears flick atop her head, capturing every echo, every breath. She stands there, chest heaving, claws extended from her fingertips, a fresh kill at her feet. He recognizes her species, even if he's never encountered them in person. Drakari, warlike Canid aliens, known for ferocity and an unyielding code of dominance. Seeing one up close, especially one that looks like this, like a goddess of blood and fury, makes his heart pound in a new, unsettling way. She meets his gaze, and for a second, he thinks she might turn on him as well. But the moment is broken when more Mercs arrive, drawn by the noise. She doesn't look at him again. Instead, her lips peel back in a low snarl, revealing sharp canines. The Mercs hesitate, clearly aware of who they're up against. Jace grips his plasma knife in one hand, his sidearm in the other, exchanging a quick glance with the Drakari warrior. They're not allies. They're not even acquaintances. But right now, they share a goal. Stay alive. They burst into motion simultaneously, as if guided by the same war drum. Jace fires 3 rounds before he has to duck a swinging club. She lunges into the fray, slicing her claws across a Merc's throat with savage grace. Shouts, snarls, the heavy clang of weapon on weapon, it all merges into a deadly cacophony. Jace sidesteps a blade thrust, empties the rest of his pistol's magazine into a second Merc, and whirls to block a third. The Drakari is a whirlwind of lethal skill, her orange hair blazing around her like a corona as she tears through. Her enemies. Blood splatters the ground. Within minutes, the skirmish is reduced to groans of the dying. Jace stands panting, noting the new slash across his armor and the shallow cut on his neck. He cracks his own stiff neck from side to side, adrenaline still coursing through him, gaze locked on the alien woman across the carnage. She's breathing heavily too, her markings pulsing with a vivid orange glow that dances along her exposed skin. He can almost feel the heat of her presence, the static of her alien energy. He lifts his chin, forcing himself to speak with that harsh edge that commands respect. "Didn't expect to see a Drakari out here," he says, voice low. "From exertion. Thanks for the assist." Her eyes narrow, and that feral intensity in her gaze makes the hair on the back of his neck rise. "I didn't come here to save you, human," she says, her voice laced with a purring undertone that sends a shiver through him. "You were just in my way." She moves past him with a fluid elegance, scanning the bodies. Jace notices her, posture stiffen when she finds the merc leader she must have been hunting. A towering figure with bizarre insectoid features, chest carved open. She growls quietly, frustration evident in the tension of her shoulders. He lifts an eyebrow, stepping closer despite himself. "What did you want from him?" She whips around, claws still extended, and he stops short, both hands slightly raised to show he's not about to attack. "Information. Or maybe I should say confirmation of a betrayal." She studies him a moment, that unwavering stare again. He was carrying data that implicates certain parties in an assassination plot. Now he's dead, and I have nothing. Jace clenches his jaw. He realizes he might be in the presence of someone with a bigger problem than his own. "You could still retrieve whatever he had on him," he offers flatly. She shakes her head, eyes flicking to the merc's shattered torso. "The device is destroyed, and I doubt your human medics can revive him at this point." Jace crosses his arms, ignoring the fresh sting of his wounds. "You'd be surprised what humans can do these days. But I'm guessing we don't have time for that, do we?" Her head tilts, ears twitching. She prowls closer, so much raw power in her every movement. Standing this near, he registers how tall she is, maybe a hair under his own considerable height, and how fiercely she radiates that hungry, dangerous aura. "Who are you?" she asks at last. "You fight better than the average merc, and your armor, that's no standard issue." "Commander Jace Riker," he says tightly, "formerly of the Earth Coalition, currently independent." She huffs, a faint trace of amusement in her voice. "Independent means you've got a price on your head." His lips curve in a humorless smirk. "It means I don't trust anyone, alien or human." She regards him, silent for a long moment. Behind them, fires still burn, giving the scene a lurid glow. His skin prickles under that intense gaze. He wonders what she sees when she looks at him. A battered soldier, maybe. A dangerous threat. Or just another obstacle between her and her goal. Finally, she exhales, some decision made. "I'm General Kareja of the Drakari war clans, and I need that information more than you can imagine. If you're truly on no one's side, then maybe you'll help me." Jace glances around at the corpses. "Looks like I already have." They're both still standing there, at an impasse, when a new round of gunfire rips through the air. Jace curses under his breath, grabs Kareja's arm, and hauls her behind a chunk of debris as bullets whiz past. She's about to snarl at him for grabbing her, but the muzzle flashes in the distance suggest these aren't friendly forces. They exchange a look. He whispers, "They've got us pinned. You wouldn't happen to have a ship or something that can get us out of here?" Her eyes flick to the side, checking angles. "My transport's a half-mile east. That might as well be half a solar system in this crossfire." He grits his teeth. "We go together or not at all?" She eyes him as though deciding whether to slice him down for daring to bark orders. But then she inclines her head, her alien markings flaring. "Fine," she purrs softly, "but try to slow me down, human, and I'll leave you bleeding in the dust." He grins, adrenaline fueling him. "Lady, I'm usually the one who does the leaving." They exchange a fierce, charged glance and then bolt together. Gunfire tears at the ground around them, sparks dancing off shattered metal. They weave through debris, trading cover, firing back. Jace sees her wade into a nest of mercs with claws out, hacking them to ribbons before they can even scream. He can't deny the savage admiration it stirs in him. He's seen a lot of fighters, but never one who moves the way she does. Every slash is poetry and violence. At one point, he ducks to reload behind a broken hover tank and sees her pinned by 3 mercs. Without pausing to think, he leaps from cover, flanking them. He fires in short bursts, 2 drop instantly, and the 3rd whirls, giving Kareja the opening to drive her claws into his chest. She flashes Jace a look that might be gratitude, if only for a heartbeat, before the adrenaline carries them onward. They plunge deeper into the war-torn district, slipping through collapsed buildings and burning corridors. By the time they reach the edge of the battlefield, Jace's lungs are fire, his heart pounding like an engine. Kareja's bright orange hair clings to her face, damp with sweat and streaked with someone else's blood. Despite it all, she stands unbowed, chest heaving, eyes gleaming with fierce purpose. Her transport is close, a sleek Drakari craft hidden in the wreckage. They scramble inside, the cockpit fitting her tall frame and streamlined alien posture, forcing Jace to wedge himself into a co-pilot seat obviously not designed for humans. The engines whir to life with an otherworldly hum. She slams the controls, and they roar out of the hot zone, blasts of plasma deflecting off the ship's shields as they punch through the night sky. Only once they're soaring above the chaos does Jace exhale a ragged breath and finally check his injuries. His arm is soaked with blood from a deeper gash than he'd realized, and his side throbs where a piece of shrapnel might still be lodged. But his eyes slide to Kareja. She grips the controls with white-knuckled intensity, ears twitching at every beep from the console. He can't tear his gaze away from those swirling markings on her neck and collarbone, the way they seem to pulse in tandem with her accelerated heartbeat. She notices him watching. For a moment, neither speaks. The tension in the cockpit is thick, part mistrust, part raw, unspoken electricity. He clears his throat first. "Any chance you've got a med kit on this thing?" She flicks a glance at him, scanning his wounds. "In the back compartment, try not to bleed all over the deck." He forces himself to stand, ignoring the sharp protest from his muscles, and moves into the cramped rear of the ship. He finds the kit, starts to patch himself up. He's trained to handle field medicine, but his hands aren't as steady as usual. Images of her ripping through those mercs keep flitting through his mind, stirring something primal. He tries to banish the thought. It's insane to be attracted to someone who might kill him in his sleep. Then again, maybe that's precisely why it excites him. When he returns to the cockpit, she's put the ship on autopilot. She's removed a metal brace from her own bicep, revealing a nasty burn that she's ignoring completely. He grunts. "You're hurt." She follows his gaze, then shrugs. "It's nothing." He moves closer, rummaging for the med kit again. "Let me see." She tenses, clearly not wanting his help, but she doesn't stop him when he takes her arm and inspects the injury. Up close, her skin is warmer than a human's, the markings almost alive beneath his fingertips. She hisses in pain when he applies the disinfectant spray, but doesn't flinch away. He's acutely aware of the shape of her muscles beneath his hand, of her gaze drilling into him. He finishes with quick efficiency, then steps back. For a second, she just looks at him, an unreadable expression on her face. He wonders what she's thinking, this lethal alien general with scalding eyes. Then she exhales, flexing her fingers. "I didn't need your assistance," she murmurs. "But thank you," he nods stiffly. "I didn't do it for you." She almost smiles, the faintest curve of her lips. "So, what are you going to do now, Commander Riker? Return to your independent life, or do you have an agenda?" He exhales. "I might ask you the same question. You said something about an assassination plot. Care to elaborate?" Her jaw tightens, as though the words taste bitter. "I came here to intercept proof of who's been undermining my people's negotiations with the Earth Coalition. A traitor, maybe more than one, looking to plunge both our worlds back into open war. Jace thinks about that, old loyalties warring with his personal grudges. He left the Earth Coalition because they tried to silence him for uncovering corruption at the highest levels. If there's a deeper conspiracy, maybe it ties back to the same rot he tried to expose." He meets her gaze, sees anger and fear flicker in those blazing eyes. Fear not for herself, he suspects, but for her people. He never thought he'd see that in a Drakari general, of all beings. He sets his jaw. If there's a chance it's connected to the corruption I found before I was labeled a traitor, I need to know. I'm not saying I trust you, but maybe we can help each other. She tilts her head, ears flicking. He can sense her caution, but also the steely resolve in her. Then you join me, human. At least until we uncover the truth. He exhales. All right. Let's see where this goes. She studies him a moment longer, then looks away, reaching for the ship's controls. Brace yourself. We're heading into Drakari territory. Humans aren't exactly welcome there, but if you're with me, no one will kill you. He snorts softly, comforting. The ship leaps to faster than atmospheric speed, leaving the scorched battlefield behind. Jace tries not to dwell on the madness of trusting this alien general. For now, it's a chance at redemption, or vengeance. And if he's being painfully honest, there's something about her. Something that digs under his skin and won't let go. They travel in tense silence for a while, each lost in private thoughts. Eventually he dozes, exhaustion tugging at him. When he wakes, the ship is setting down on a small landing pad, carved into red cliffs under a sky dotted with foreign stars. He peers out the cockpit window to see a fortress-like structure perched on the edge of a canyon. Drakari sentries stand guard in the distance, and as soon as they spot the incoming vessel, lights flare to track its descent. Kareja powers down the engines. The ramp hisses open, letting in a gust of warm, arid air. She stands, towering over Jace, her posture stiff. Stay close to me, Commander. If anyone questions you, keep your mouth shut and your hand off. Your weapon, unless you want to start a clan war. He raises an eyebrow. You talk like I'm the hot-headed one. A faint smirk curves her lips. Just do as I say. He shoulders his gear, feeling the weight of countless battles in his bones, and follows her down the ramp. The moment his boots touch the ground, he's struck by the intense dryness of the air. The way dust swirls around them in serpentine patterns. Before them, a group of Drakari warriors approach, each armed and clad in partial armor that highlights their lethal physiques. They have the same fox-like ears, fierce features, and swirling markings. Jace instinctively tenses, sensing their hostility. One warrior steps forward, bearing fangs. General Kareja, you've returned later than expected. His gaze shifts to Jace. And you've brought a human. Kareja's voice is cold. He's with me. Is there a problem with that? The warrior's gaze lingers on Jace, as if calculating how quickly he could kill him. No, as long as he knows his place. Jace exhales through his nose, forcing himself not to rise to the challenge. He's not here to pick a fight. Kareja gives him a sharp glance, warning him to hold his tongue. He complies, though every fiber of his being bristles under the condescension. She leads him past the sentries into the fortress. The architecture is harsh, built with jagged angles and thick walls, as if to ward off any invasion. Trophies of past victories line the halls, broken blades, monstrous skulls, war banners spattered with old blood. The air thrums with an undercurrent of tension, a sense that violence can erupt at any moment. Jace can't help but notice the glares aimed his way by every Drakari they pass. Eventually, Kareja brings him to a chamber that might be her private quarters, though it looks more like a strategic planning room. There's a large holomap projector in the center, flickering to life under her command. She gestures for Jace to stand opposite her as she inputs coordinates, pulls up star charts, and expands outpost diagrams. Information streams across the glowing display, painting a picture of conspiracies, shifting alliances, and hidden threats. She begins to brief him with clipped efficiency. We've been on the brink of a peace accord for months, but an unknown element is sabotaging every attempt. Assassinations, bombings, infiltration from mercenaries. My intelligence says someone high in the Drakari leadership is complicit, possibly working with certain human officials who also profit from continued war. Jace studies the data, heart pounding. That matches what I found back in the coalition. Some corrupt generals were fueling the conflict to keep weapons contracts lucrative. If they've teamed up with a Drakari traitor, It's no wonder we're all facing down another galactic war. Her hands flex on the console. We need hard evidence. Something that can't be dismissed as rumor. And we need it soon. He nods. Agreed. She powers down the display, tension rippling through her. But first, you should rest. You look half dead. He lets out a low laugh. Trust me, this is what I look like on a good day. She doesn't return. His humor. She steps closer, the heat of her body palpable. Commander Riker, Jace, this place is dangerous. My people follow me, but many despise humans. If you wander alone, you might not see the sunrise. Do you understand? He meets her gaze without flinching. I've survived worse odds. Her eyes narrow slightly. I don't doubt your skill, but these halls are filled with those. Who'd gut you for sport? Stay here, I'll have some supplies sent. We'll plan our next move once we have a lead. He nods, and she turns on her heel to leave. But he can't shake the surge of energy that courses through him every time he meets her eyes. It's more than adrenaline. She's lethal, uncompromising, and magnetic. He's never been one to chase trouble. Trouble always found him, but this feels different, like a siren call, as if the warrior in her calls to the predator in him. He collapses onto a rough bench along the wall, closes his eyes for a moment. Memories of the recent fight flash behind his lids, her savage skill. The way her markings glowed when she was locked in combat, the taste of dust and blood in the air. He wonders if this alliance is the biggest mistake of his life, or the only path to redemption he has left. Hours slip by. He might have dozed, lulled by exhaustion and the quiet hum of distant footsteps outside. When he stirs, a young Drakari messenger stands in the doorway, tense and cautious, carrying a small crate of rations, water, and bandages. The messenger places them on a table, shoots Jace a scathing glare, then departs without a word. Welcome wagon indeed. He digs into the supplies, cleans his wounds more thoroughly, and downs a protein bar that tastes like salted metal. It's enough to keep him on his feet. Then he stands, pacing the room, trying to map out a plan in his head. He doesn't know how to navigate Drakari politics, but he knows how to root out corruption and how to kill it. He's mid-thought when Kareja returns. She steps into the room with controlled grace, but there's a tension in her posture. I have news, she says. I've uncovered a lead. There's a hidden facility off-world where these mercenaries might be gathering. If we can get there, maybe we'll find the evidence we need. He nods, arms crossed. When do we leave? Her lips twist into a grin, sharp as a blade. At once. They slip out through the fortress corridors, evading stares and muttered curses from the Drakari soldiers. Jace keeps one hand near his weapon, acutely aware that if Kareja weren't here, half of these warriors would gladly tear him. They mart. She speaks to no one, head held high, projecting an aura of dominance that brooks no challenge. A few braver sorts incline their heads in respect, but he can see the suspicion in their eyes. At the landing pad, she points to a smaller, sleeker craft, evidently her personal vessel. They board and soon they're slicing through the alien sky, bound for the coordinates she's uncovered. The tension between them is a quiet storm. He sits in the co-pilot seat again, watching her readouts, feeling her presence like a gravitational pull. She's so controlled, so fierce, yet there's something simmering under the surface. He clears his throat, not really sure why he's starting. Conversation. So, you said you're a general? You lead armies? She keeps her gaze on the stars streaming by. Yes. He waits for more, but she doesn't elaborate. That's a lot of responsibility. She exhales, a low sound. My clan's faith in me was won through battle and blood. We Drakari respect strength above all else. I earned my position. It's my duty to protect them from internal and external threats, even if that means forcing alliances with your kind. He picks up on her lingering contempt. I'm not here representing humanity, if that helps. She glances at him. I know. Silence falls again, thick with unspoken things. Jace can't help remembering how she looked in that first fight, how her body moved with lethal grace, how the glow of her markings lit up her skin. It's a distraction, and he's usually better at compartmentalizing. But there's something about her that strips away his normal defenses. Before they can delve deeper, an alarm chimes. She curses in her language, flicking a switch. We've got pursuit! Looks like automated drones patrolling near the facility's coordinates. Jace grimaces. We can't just blast them out of the sky if we're trying to sneak in. She jerks the controls. I'll try to evade. Prepare to fight if they corner us. He readies the ship's weapon systems, heart pounding as red blips fill the radar. The next few minutes are a frantic dogfight in the upper atmosphere. Kareja pilots with unnerving skill, weaving between canyons and swirling storm clouds to shake the drones. Jace fires short bursts, taking out 2 of the pursuers, but more appear. The ship rattles as a plasma bolt strikes the aft shield. Kareja snarls, twisting the craft into a narrow canyon pass. The walls streak by so close that Jace holds his breath, sure they'll crash. But somehow she navigates the chasm, hugging the sharp turns. The drones are forced to break formation. He blasts another out of the sky. They surge forward, leaving the rest behind. By the time they emerge from the canyon, the sensors read clear. Jace exhales a shaky breath. You're insane, she laughs, short and savage. I'm alive, that's all that matters. They guide the damaged ship to a hidden plateau near the facility's coordinates. It's an abandoned mining outpost on a desert moon, its dusty plains stretching into the horizon. The facility itself is a hulking structure of steel and concrete, half buried in the sand. Perfect place for a clandestine operation. They disembark, creeping along the perimeter. Turrets dot the compound walls, scanning the horizons, but most attention seems focused on the sky where the drones circle. Jace and Kareja work together in a smooth, unspoken rhythm, taking out perimeter guards with silent takedowns, disabling cameras. He covers her blind spots. She uses her claws to slice locks or throats as needed. Adrenaline churns through him. This is the part he excels at. Infiltration, close combat, the dance of life and death. He sees Kareja in action and respects her skill, respects her lethal prowess, and if he's honest, finds it dangerously attractive. They slip deeper into the facility. Corridors hum with flickering lights. Machinery whirls in the distance. They press against walls, scanning for hostiles, mindful of every footstep. Soon they discover a central lab area, screens full of data streams, and racks of weapons that gleam ominously under neon lights. Jace's eyes narrow. Someone's stockpiling for a major conflict. She nods grimly. Let's find a terminal and extract whatever we can. They break into a side room. Kareja quickly subdues a technician with a nerve pinch that leaves him sprawled unconscious. Jace slides into a chair, hacking the console while she stands guard by the door, muscles, coiled to strike if anyone interrupts. Lines of code flash. His heart thumps. This is it. They've got logs, communiques, references to high-ranking officials in both Drakari and Coalition ranks. Enough evidence to prove collaboration. She exhales, tension evident in her voice. Download it all, hurry. He does, transferring data to a secure drive. But then an alarm blares. Doors slam shut down the corridor. Kareja curses. We're out of time. They rush out, but armed guards swarm in, rifles and vibro-swords at the ready. A swirl of chaos ensues. Gunshots ricochet off walls. Plasma bursts light up the gloom. Jace drops to a knee, firing controlled bursts to take out 2 guards. Kareja hurls herself at another cluster, claws tearing through armor with terrifying ease. The facility's alarms shriek, and more reinforcements. Borin. Jace slams the fresh magazine home, teeth gritted as he trades fire with a squad of heavily armed mercs. Something ignites within him, that old primal thirst for battle. He's in his element now, ducking, rolling, returning fire, each shot placed with lethal precision. But the numbers are overwhelming. A bullet grazes his thigh, sending a stab of pain up his leg. He bites back a curse and keeps shooting. In the midst of it, he steals glances at Kareja. Blood splashes her lithe body as she rips through enemies, the glow of her markings growing brighter with every surge of adrenaline. The sounds of her snarls mix with the clatter of metal and screams of the dying. They stand back to back in a corridor, fending off merc after merc. A fleeting thought slips through him. They fight like they were forged together, like two halves of a single unstoppable force. At last, they seize a momentary lull in the fighting. Bodies litter the floor, the alarm still wailing. They exchange a look, both breathing hard, cut and bruised. Neither runs, neither yields. The rush of combat, the taste of near death, crackles around them. "Need a route out," Jace growls. She jerks her head. "Maintenance tunnels below." We move fast. They race down a side hall, sidestepping more incoming guards, weaving through parted metal doors. The facility shakes with internal explosions as security measures and sabotage protocols are triggered. Smoke chokes the air. Heat blasts Jace's face. Kareja slams her shoulder into a sealed hatch, forcing it open with raw strength. They slide down a ladder into the darkness below. Metal walkways stretch through an underbelly, thick with pipes and vents spewing steam. Red emergency lights strobe. Footsteps echo from all directions. Jace checks the downloaded data, making sure the device is intact. Kareja peers down a corridor, ears swiveling, her entire body tensed for the next fight. A group of mercs appears at the far end of the walkway. They open fire. Jace and Kareja dive behind crates. Bullets and plasma scorch the air. She snarls, glancing at him, eyes blazing. He nods, breath ragged. They break cover at once, charging forward. Jace empties his rifle into the group, dropping two, and Kareja springs at the survivors, claws out, tackling them with lethal force. The shrieks die quickly, then silence. Just their panting, the hiss of steam, the echo of distant explosions. Adrenaline courses hot, hearts pounding, and for an instant, all that aggression and survival instinct finds nowhere to go but into each other. They stand there, chests heaving, eyes locked. Something cracks in the tension. They lunge at the bee. Same time, colliding in a frantic heated kiss against the metal wall. It's violent, desperate, fueled by the knowledge they could die at any second. She presses him back, fiercely kissing him, her sharp teeth grazing his lip. He tastes copper, can't tell whose blood it is. His hands find her waist, the curve of her hips, pulling her closer. Her markings glow with heightened intensity, radiating heat he can feel through his battered armor. There's no gentle exploration here, only need and hunger after too many close calls. Her claws tangle in his hair, the sensation bordering on pain, but he's beyond caring. He bites at her lower lip, breath ragged, and she growls deep in her throat. A fresh explosion rocks the facility, snapping them out of it. They part, panting hard, searching each other's eyes. No words. Just a searing understanding that whatever just sparked between them, it's unstoppable. They tear themselves away from the moment, forced by the new wave of approaching enemies. Kareja yanks him forward by the collar of his jacket, the lingering taste of her kiss still on his lips. They sprint down the walkway, each step echoing with the thunder of explosions overhead. The structure groans, threatening collapse. Jace clutches the data drive like it's the only thing that matters, but a deeper, more confusing urgency churns in his gut, the hunger for her. It's a maddening distraction at a time like this, but it pulses under his skin, refusing to be ignored. Finally, they spot an exit hatch. They pry it open, feeling the desert moon's scorching wind whip across their sweat-drenched faces. A battered transport shuttle sits beyond, probably left behind by the mercs. They don't waste time. Jace hotwires the console while Kareja stands guard, dispatching stragglers who stumble into view. Soon, the shuttle's engines cough to life, and they lift off just as the facility collapses into a fiery ruin behind them. They roar into the sky, battered and bruised but victorious, carrying the data that could end this conspiracy. In the cramped cockpit, they slump into the seats, adrenaline fading. Jace tastes blood on his tongue, wonders how many new scars he'll have by tomorrow. He glances sideways. Kareja's face is smeared with soot and alien blood, her hair a wild tangle of orange flame, her chest rising and falling as she catches her breath. Her eyes flick to him, and despite everything, heat still simmers between them. He fights the urge to reach out. Instead, he focuses on the console. "We got what we needed," she inclines her head. "Yes, with this we can expose the traitors. Silence lingers, thick with unspoken tension. He finally risks a look, meeting her eyes. About that kiss. She cuts him off with a low growl, leaning forward. You think too much, human. She seizes the collar of his jacket again, yanking him close, mouth crushing his in another fierce, punishing kiss. He groans, returning. It with equal fervor, the console pressing into his side. His heart pounds, half expecting her to tear his throat out in the same moment. But she doesn't. Instead, her fangs scrape lightly across his lower lip as she deepens the kiss. He can't help the low sound he makes, the raw need coursing through him. Suddenly she pulls away, breathing ragged, eyes glowing. That's what it was, she murmurs, voice still vibrating with that purring timbre. You want more, survive the next fight. He stares at her, torn between frustration and a rush of animal excitement. You're damn sure of yourself. She arches a brow, that predatory smirk curling her lips. I have to be. Now set course for Drakari territory. Our next battle awaits. He drags a hand down his face. Then let's get to it. The stolen shuttle rattles as they push it to maximum velocity, breaking atmosphere, heading for coordinates that will take them back to her fortress. He can still taste her on his lips, still feel the iron grip of her claws, the burn of her gaze. It's madness to feel this way in the midst of war and betrayal, but maybe that's exactly why it's happening. When death lurks around every corner, desire can flare like wildfire. When they dock back at the Drakari stronghold, it's nighttime according to local rotation, but the fortress never sleeps. Guards challenge them at once, but Kareja's authority is absolute here. She marches through the halls with Jace at her side, ignoring the hostile stares. They reach the strategic command chamber where a handful of her sub-commanders wait. Words fly in a flurry of Drakari speech. Jace catches none of it, but from their reactions, it's clear the data they've brought is a bombshell. Several sub-commanders look shocked, others enraged. Kareja slams a clawed hand on a console, gesturing to the screens. Jace sees images of high-ranking Drakari officials in secret meetings with human generals. Evidence of arms deals, sabotage operations. It's enough to unravel entire governments. The sub-commanders argue among themselves, some even turning accusatory glances on Kareja, but she snarls them into submission. She stands like a queen, blazing eyes demanding obedience. The tension is explosive. Jace hangs back, not wanting to provoke them. Finally, she barks an order, and the sub-commanders disperse, leaving only one older Drakari behind. An advisor, perhaps. Kareja addresses Jace directly. We have enough evidence to bring down several lords of the High Council. They will not go quietly. He nods. What's our next move? She paces, tail. He realizes for the first time she has a sleek, fox-like tail, twitching in agitation. I must gather those still loyal to me. We'll strike at the seat of corruption directly. Jace grimaces. That'll be a fight. She bares her canines in a near smile. All the better. The older Drakari advisor steps in, speaking softly to Kareja in their language, glancing at Jace with obvious distrust. Kareja listens, her jaw clenched. Jace can't tell if the words are a warning or a threat. Finally, she dismisses the advisor with a curt nod. When they're alone again in the chamber, she turns to Jace, eyes burning with urgency. My people demand a show of strength. They fear that involving a human will weaken us. The only way to rally them is to prove our bond is unbreakable. Jace's brow furrows. Bond? We've known each other a day. She bristles, frustration flashing across her face. Don't be dense. The Drakari have rituals, and alliances must be sealed in blood. Or more. Your presence here is already a risk. If we don't demonstrate unity, I'll lose the clans. Before we can even launch an attack, they'll see me as compromised. He exhales, the tension ratcheting higher. What exactly do you need from me? Her gaze flicks over him in a way that sends heat skittering across his skin. A blood oath, or a claim. A demonstration that you stand with me, in war and beyond. He realizes the weight of what she's saying. Among her people, alliances are sealed physically. He can guess which direction she's leaning. His heart thuds. You want me to pretend to be, what, your consort? Your mate? Her lips curl. It's not pretending, Jace. Not if you feel the same fire. He tries to swallow, his mouth dry. He hates feeling cornered, but he can't deny the electric pull between them. And it's not just lust. There's a twisted kind of respect, even admiration for her strength and honor. What does it entail? She steps closer, so close he can feel her body heat, sees the swirl of those alien markings across her collarbones. A ceremony before. The clan. We share blood, vow loyalty. And in the eyes of the Drakari, that vow is sealed by physical union. His mind reels. This is insane. He's never run from a challenge, but mating with an alien general in front of half her clan. That's on another level. Yet part of him roars in approval. He wants her, craves her, and if it solidifies their alliance, maybe it's the best. Strategic move. You sure this is the only way? She scoffs. I could challenge every doubter to single combat, but that would take too long and might weaken me before the real fight. This is faster and more assured. He runs a hand through his hair, exhaling. Then let's do it. But let's make one thing clear. I'm not kneeling for anyone. Her eyes flash with a dangerous amusement. We'll see. The next hours pass in a whirlwind of preparations. Jace feels as if he's been dropped into a surreal dream. Kareja's sub-commanders gather, lighting great braziers around an open courtyard in the fortress. Dozens, maybe hundreds, of Drakari warriors assemble in a wide ring, gazes fierce and questioning. The roar of wind through the canyon walls and the flicker of the flames cast everything in wild shadows. Kareja stands at the center, clad in ceremonial armor that leaves much of her skin and its swirling markings exposed. She looks regal, terrifying, and impossibly alluring. Jace, stripped of his battered earth armor, wears a simple tunic and dark trousers provided by her clan. They fit awkwardly, but at least he can move freely. A hush falls as they meet in the middle of the circle. He glances around warily, sees 100 sets of glowing eyes watching their every move. He can almost taste their hostility, their skepticism. But he stands tall. He won't show weakness now. She turns to an elder priestess figure, who presents a blade carved from obsidian-like stone. The priestess speaks in Drakari, voice echoing off the courtyard walls, building to a chant. Kareja grips the blade, turns to Jace. She presses the blade to her palm, cutting a shallow line that beads with dark, coppery blood. Then she hands it to him. He knows the ritual is simple. Share blood, vow unity. With a steady breath, he slices his own palm. Pain flares, but he doesn't flinch. He clasps her hand, feeling the warm slick of their mingled blood, and stares into her burning eyes. She speaks her vow in the Drakari tongue, then, in a halting, rough approximation of English. I, Kareja, bind my life and battle to you, Jace Riker. Let none break this bond under pain of my claws. He hesitates, heart hammering, then speaks in a clear voice. I, Jace Riker, bind my strength to yours, Kareja. We fight as one. The crowd rumbles, a deep collective growl of approval and wariness. The priestess steps back, and Kareja motions for them to be led inside. He realizes the second part of the ritual is not for public display. The crowd parts, letting them pass into a private chamber lit by smoldering torches. The door slams, shut behind them, leaving them alone in the flickering gloom. His hand still aches where the blade bit deep. Her blood is on his palm, and he sees his own on hers. The air is thick with tension and something else, an undercurrent of primal lust that has been smoldering between them since the moment they met. He breaks the silence first. So this is where we seal it, huh? She's already stepping toward him. Yes, no turning back. He doesn't want to turn back. Not now. His blood is up, fueled by the ceremony, the fight, the knowledge that he might die soon. This is the only moment he can claim something real in the midst of chaos. She pushes him against the wall, and he lets her, meeting her fierce kiss with his own. Her claws curl into the fabric of his tunic, tearing it aside with impatient strength. He gasps at the sudden cool air on his skin, then groans as her mouth moves to his neck, nibbling and biting. Her markings glow bright, heat rolling, off her in waves. He slides his hand under the plates of her armor, feeling taut muscle and the ridges of her scars. She pulls back just enough to strip off her ceremonial armor. It clatters to the stone floor, revealing the sinuous lines of her body. The swirling orange patterns stand out starkly against her pale skin, pulsing in a rhythm that echoes her rapid breathing. Jace's eyes roam over her, raw hunger igniting. He can't hold back any longer. He crushes his lips to hers, one hand tangling in her wild hair, the other tracing the curve of her waist. She growls into his mouth, a sound of raw need. Her tail brushes his leg, sending a strange, electric shock through him. He grips her hips, hoisting her against him. They stumble onto the bed of furs in the corner, a messy tangle of limbs. Their breath mingles in hot gasps, hearts pounding like war drums. Every movement feels desperate, driven by the reality that each breath could be their last in a galaxy at war. Her lips trail along his jaw, biting just enough to leave marks. He groans, burying his fingers in her orange hair, marveling at its silky texture. She arches her back as he explores the contours of her body, her alien physiology subtly different, but undeniably compelling. He feels the flex of her muscles under his touch, the slick heat of her skin. They lose themselves in each other, a surge of frantic passion that leaves no room for uncertainty. She is just as aggressive here as on the battlefield, demanding and powerful. He meets her intensity with his own, refusing to be dominated outright, a contest of wills even in this, most intimate act. Their bodies collide, slick with sweat, the mingling of their breath a testament to their mutual hunger. She gasps something in her language, and he doesn't need a translation to understand. He rolls them over, pinning her for a moment as he kisses a path along her throat, tasting salt and the faint spice of her alien skin. She hisses, eyes fluttering shut, and her claws rake down his back, leaving trails of stinging pain that only fuel him further. They move together in a feverish dance of release, fueled by adrenaline, desire, and the knowledge that they're forging a bond that will shape their futures. Every thrust, every brush of their bodies feels like another vow, another promise that neither will stand alone. Her voice breaks in raw cries, his groans echo in the chamber. The tension coils tighter until it snaps, leaving them shuddering, hearts pounding against each other's chests. When it's over, they lie there, tangled in the furs, drenched, in sweat, breath sawing in and out. No gentle afterglow, no soft cooing. Just the ragged aftermath of an explosion of pent-up aggression and need. His back burns from her scratches, and he can see new welts forming on her arms from his rough grip. A part of him wants to say something, but the words won't come. Maybe they're not needed. They both chose this. They both know why. Eventually, she shifts, propping herself on an elbow, her eyes still glowing faintly in the torchlight. "We're bonded now," she murmurs. "By Drakari law, you're mine." He raises an eyebrow, smirking through the haze of exhaustion. "Funny, I was going to say you're mine." She bares her canines in a challenging grin. "We'll see who claims who." He laughs, a low sound that surprises even him with its genuine amusement. Then he presses a quick, fierce kiss to her mouth. "For now, maybe we'll call it a tie." They settle into a tense but oddly comforting silence, the reality of what they've done settling over them like a weighted cloak. He can almost feel the shift in the fortress's energy. Outside, her clan will know the ritual is complete. Word will spread that General Kareja has taken a human mate, sealing an alliance that could tear down a conspiracy and change the fate of two species. Yet even in that gravity, he can't deny the primal satisfaction of having her in his arms, of tasting her strength and giving her his own. War could come at dawn, and they might not survive, but tonight they claimed this sliver of defiant life. They rest for a time, but soon the demands of leadership call. Kareja rises, dressing in practical armor, expression hardened. Jace follows suit, though he has to improvise new bandages for the scratches she left on him. A thin sheen of sweat still clings to them both, and the air smells of recent passion, but they push it aside. This is war. Outside, the fortress is abuzz. Warriors greet Kareja with cautious respect, eyes sliding to Jace with uncertainty, but they don't openly challenge him. Perhaps that was the point. They set off for the war room, side by side, the sub-commanders nodding in deference. She calls for a briefing, and the room fills with Drakari elite, each bearing the scars and bearing of veterans. Jace stands slightly behind her, letting her take the lead. This is her territory, after all. She outlines the evidence of betrayal, the infiltration at the highest ranks. Faces darken with rage, low growls ripple through the chamber. Jace can feel the shift. The clan is uniting under her leadership, galvanized by her bold choice to bond with a human. She seizes that momentum, forging a plan to strike against the conspirators before they can consolidate power. Jace steps forward, adding his intel, explaining how the corrupt Earth generals might respond. He sees skepticism in some eyes, but Kareja's unwavering stance beside him forces them to listen. Tension hangs in the air, thick as storm clouds, but a current of determination threads through it. They have to act quickly. The conspirators could already be preparing a counterattack. It's decided. A joint strike, hitting multiple strongholds in Drakari space, while also sending evidence to key figures in the Earth Coalition who can't be bought or corrupted. They'll expose the plot publicly, forcing the conspirators into the open. Then, in one decisive battle, they'll cut the head off the snake. If all goes well, it could end the threat of war. If they fail, countless lives will burn. Preparations. They move at a breakneck pace. Fleets are mobilized, troops armed. Jace coordinates with Kareja's top lieutenants, planning infiltration squads and sabotage teams. He's never worked so closely with aliens, especially not the Drakari, but necessity and the bond with Kareja smooth the way. He can't deny a twisted sense of belonging here, among these ferocious warriors who value strength and honor above politics. At one point, as they're reviewing the final assault plan in a private corner of the war room, Kareja leans in close, speaking low enough only he can hear. After this fight, everything changes. Either we succeed, or we die. He nods, scanning the holographic maps. I've died inside enough times already. One more won't matter. She huffs, brushing a claw gently against his jaw. Don't speak like that. I need you alive. It's an uncharacteristic admission, and it stirs something deep in his chest. He turns his head, grazing her wrist with his lips. Then let's survive together. Her eyes flicker with that familiar, dangerous light, but she steps back, returning her focus to the plan. Business first. The tender moment, if it can be called that, lingers in his mind as they finalize the strike schedule. They'll launch at dawn, local time, hitting the main conspirator fortress, an orbital station where Drakari traitors and human mercenaries are rumored to be gathering. That night, he finds her again in the quiet hush of the fortress corridors. Warriors are prepping for the next day's battle, sharpening blades, cleaning rifles, saying their final prayers. Jace leans against a stone pillar, watching her approach in the torchlight. She looks exhausted, but fierce as ever. He can't help but ask softly, "Do you want company tonight?" She steps closer, eyes roaming over him. "Is that an invitation? Or are you asking permission?" He smirks. "Whichever makes you say yes." She studies him, a faint curve to her lips. "We have a few hours until dawn. Show me what a human can do with them." He doesn't need a second invitation. He takes her hand, leading her to a small alcove where the flicker of torchlight shadows them from passers-by. They don't have time for drawn-out games. The kiss is immediate, urgent. Their blood sings with the tension of impending battle. Every touch is a reminder of mortality, a fierce denial of the possibility that one might lose the other tomorrow. His hands grip her hips, pulling her flush. She grinds against him, nails digging lightly into his shoulders. He's still sore. From the last time, muscles protesting. But the rush of desire eclipses the pain. She hooks a leg around his waist, and he braces her against the stone, their breaths mingling in hot gasps as they devour each other's mouths. Her armor pieces clatter as they shift to expose more skin. He shivers at the brush of her markings, the way they pulse brighter when she's aroused. She nips at his neck, a playful, aggressive bite that makes him hiss with pleasure pain. They're not gentle people. They're warriors, and even their intimacy carries the violent undercurrent of their natures. The moment is brief, but intense. Bodies pressed tight, friction coiling tension deep in their cores. Soft moans and growls echo off the cold stone walls. It's a stolen interlude, a secret act of defiance against the war outside. When they climax, it's with muffled groans, swallowing each other's cries to avoid drawing an audience. Then they hold each other in the flickering gloom, hearts still hammering, sweat beading on their skin. She kisses his jaw, a rare hint of gentleness bleeding through. "I won't let them take you," she whispers. He strokes her hair. They won't get the chance. They part, fixing their clothes, returning to the world of strategy and bloodshed. With the dawn, the fortress erupts into organized chaos. Dropships line the landing platforms, troops assemble in formation, and Kareja stands at the forefront, issuing final orders. Jace stands at her side, feeling the eyes of the Drakari upon him. They're about to do the unthinkable. Combined offensive of alien and human, bound by a single cause. They lift off, a fleet of warships rising into the red dawn sky heading for orbit. Jace steels himself for the battle to come, checking his weapons, ignoring the flutter in his chest. He glances at Kareja strapped into the commander's seat of the lead dropship, her expression carved from stone. The bond they share buzzes under his skin. A short warp jump later, they emerge near the orbital station. Immediately, the station's defenses open fire. Drones, turrets, and human-piloted fighters scream into the fray. The Drakari warships retaliate with a barrage of plasma cannons, lighting the void with lethal brilliance. Explosions blossom against the star-flecked blackness. Amid the chaos, the boarding craft streak in, carrying strike teams. Jace leads one squad, Kareja another. They plan to converge in the central command hub. As soon as his dropship clamps onto an airlock, Jace hits the release and barrels inside with half a dozen Drakari warriors at his back. Bullets and plasma fire greet them. The corridor becomes a deadly funnel of swirling smoke and muzzle flashes. He fights with a cold, methodical fury, gun barking in sharp bursts. The Drakari cover his flanks, hurling grenades that fill the air with shrapnel and carnage. They push forward, step by bloody step. Jace's armor is battered, fresh cuts stinging, but he keeps going. He thinks of Kareja fighting in a different corridor. The thought of her unstoppable ferocity pushes him onward. Finally, they link up with her squad near the heart of the station. The command hub is a sprawling chamber, filled with monitors and holodisplays, ringed by control consoles. The moment they breach the door, an ambush is triggered. High caliber, turrets pop from the walls, pinning them in a hail of bullets. Conspirators in both human and Drakari form hunker behind barricades, returning fire. Jace dives behind a console, panting, glancing around for Kareja. She's crouched behind debris, snarling commands to her troops. Then, as if sensing his gaze, she locks eyes with him. A silent understanding passes. They end this together. He signals 2 Drakari warriors to lay down suppressing fire. Kareja leaps up, sprinting across open ground, bullets pinging off the floor around her. Jace stands, firing in tandem to keep the enemy heads down. She lands on a guard, driving her claws into his chest, then whirls to slash another. Jace rushes forward, tossing a grenade that disables half the turrets. Smoke billows, shouts ring. Out. The conspirators scramble to retreat. It's chaos. Through the haze, Jace sees the lead conspirator, a high-ranking Drakari official with ornate armor, attempting to flee. He leaps over a barricade, chasing him. A human general stands in his way, face twisted in rage. The general raises a pistol. Jace shoots first, the bullet catching the man in the throat. He goes down, choking, blood staining the console. Meanwhile, Kareja corners the Drakari, traitor near a bank of monitors. He tries to strike her with a blade, but she effortlessly blocks. Her tail lashes in anger, claws scraping the floor. She pins him against the console, baring her canines in a snarl. "You dare betray the clans?" He sneers, fangs bared. "Fool, our people thrive on war. Peace will make us weak." She roars, driving her claws into his gut. He gasps, eyes wide before crumpling, leaving a streak of blood on the console. She steps back, breathing hard, markings blazing with victory. The station's defenses start shutting down now that the conspirators are neutralized and the remaining mercenaries surrender or flee. The Drakari forces secure the command hub. Jace staggers through the settling dust, scanning for hostiles. All he sees are the dead and the dying. Kareja stands tall, chest heaving, silhouette lit by the flickering lights. Around them, the war is effectively won. What remains is mopping up stragglers and broadcasting the evidence. He meets her gaze across the carnage. There's relief in her eyes, and something else. Pride, perhaps. She motions him closer. He crosses the distance, ignoring the stench of blood and smoke, in front of the battered survivors, in front of her clan. She takes his face in her hands and kisses him, fierce and possessive. The Drakari warriors roar in approval, weapons clashing in a victory salute. They break apart, forehead to forehead, breathing each other in. She whispers, "It's over," he nods. "We should transmit the data. Let everyone see the truth." She nods, stepping to the console. With a few taps, she unleashes the incriminating files across multiple networks. The traitors' plan is laid bare for the galaxy to witness. It may not bring immediate peace, but it rips the mask off those who orchestrated the chaos they won't be able to hide. Hours later, the station is under Drakari control. The conspirators are captured or slain. Jace helps the injured, including some humans who were just following orders and didn't know they were part of a grand betrayal. He's exhausted, physically and mentally. But Kareja is always near, a steady anchor in the swirling aftermath. In a secured chamber, the last echoes of the battle fade. She pulls him aside, away from prying eyes. He expects a strategy talk or a briefing, but instead, she places a hand on his cheek. Her ears twitch slightly, eyes softer than he's seen. Them. "Commander Riker," she says quietly, "you fought well, you fought as my equal." He smirks, leaning into her touch. "Was there ever any doubt?" She huffs a short laugh. "Perhaps not, but now we have other matters to consider." He arches a brow. "Such as?" Her gaze drops for an instant, then returns to his. "The bond we forged isn't just a ritual. My species, well, let's say we're more fertile than humans assume. It seems our bond has triggered certain biological imperatives." He blinks, heart thumping. "Meaning?" She cocks her head, ears flicking with a mix of amusement and challenge. "Meaning, brace yourself, human, we're having puppies." He exhales in a rush, caught between incredulity and a strange, fierce joy. That's a hell of an ultimatum." She presses herself closer, that mischievous glint returning to her eyes. "Do you object?" He laughs, the sound echoing in the quiet chamber. "Hell no, but I've never seen fatherhood coming in the middle of a war." She kisses him with surprising tenderness. "It's a new war now. One we'll fight together." He nods, heart warm despite the violence and bloodshed that led them here. "Then I guess we'd better get ready." Outside, the Drakari cheer their success, and the news of the conspiracy's collapse spreads. But in this moment, all Jace cares about is the unstoppable alien woman in his arms and the bond that neither bullets nor betrayal could break. Even in a galaxy that thrives on conflict, they found each other. The rest, they'll face side by side. No one can say what the future holds. Peace is never guaranteed, and enemies will always lurk in the shadows. But as they stand in the ruins of the final battle, bound by blood and sealed by passion, Jace Riker and General Kareja know they've won something worth fighting for. And if that means puppies, well, so be it. They've already proven they can survive anything together.